G'day everybody and welcome back to this week's episode of the ScaleHQ Podcast. I am joined today by Dawid Naude, who is the founder of Pathfinder.ai. He owns, leads, whatever you want to call it. He's the founder of one of the fastest growing AI consulting businesses in Australia right now. They have grown from like 2 people to 20 people in the last 16 months. That's pretty fast growth in a services business. And what they do is focus on particularly helping, sort of smaller to mid-sized businesses. So they deal with larger enterprise customers, but also sort of mid-sized businesses in getting real and measurable wins from AI without the hype and without the noise. And what I loved about this conversation, it came onto my radar not long ago and was introduced to me as someone who's just a straight talker, just like no bullshit, no fluff. And I love that, like not about theory, not about buzzwords, very practical. So if you are running a kind of sub $30 million business, it might be 2, it might be 5, it might be 10. There are AI opportunities everywhere. You may not have a clue on where actually to focus or where to start or where to build your own skills or where to build the team skills or what kind of projects to tackle. So today, it's a great and sort of free-flowing conversation around where are the practical applications for AI, how do you get started, what do you focus on, and it's not full of like crazy tech talk and jargon. It's practical things. So this episode should be able to help you save money, make money, stay competitive, and it's going to give you like simple starting points, real examples and fresh ideas that you can actually use. So without further ado, let us dive right in. Welcome to Dawid Naude from Pathfinder.ai.
Welcome to the ScaleHQ Podcast. I am Sean Steele and I'm a growth mentor, digital nomad, a massive metalhead, and the founder of ScaleHQ. And you, more importantly, are a founder of a 7 or 8 figure services business who is finally ready to get serious about scaling up or securing a step back from your business or a life-changing exit in the next 3 to 5 years. And if that's you, then you are in the right place, because with over 100 million in revenue growth across my last 4 companies and many acquisitions under my belt, I have spent my whole career figuring out what makes businesses more valuable, scalable, and sellable. And I've learned a couple of things, and I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to share those with you today. So welcome to your fortnightly dose of practical strategy, founder success stories, and expert deep dives to help you finally get a return on all that sacrifice that you've made in your business. Welcome to the show. Let's dive right in.
G'day, David from Pathfinder.ai. I mean, you are actually one of the fastest. I don't know if you're the fastest. I don't know how you'd even measure that. But I don't know whether you're like tracking your competitors to see who's growing faster. But you've grown from 2 people to 20 people in 16 months. So by anybody's scaling measures, that is a fast growing, and it's a services business. Probably that's a fast growing services business. So I'm thrilled to be chatting to you today about, I guess, kind of the practical takeaways and the applications for particularly founders in the, 1 to 30 million space that, of course, don't have deep technical teams, are often not technical founders themselves, are all going, what the hell do I do about AI? I know it's a massive opportunity. It may also be disruptive. Like, where do I start? And so that's really what today is about. Is you're the expert in this space. I really will kind of want to unpack with you some of the opportunities for them to be thinking about, maybe some of the risks, some of the implications, and make sure they've got some practical stuff to take away. How does that sound as a setup for us today?
Yeah, it sounds perfect, and I've learned probably more about entrepreneurship and being a founder and scaling than I have about AI in the last 18 months. It really has been that's been the big growth journey. The AI part has just been the icing on the top.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Well, hopefully we also get a bit of time to chat about how you might be using it in your own business today. So, but maybe can you just give us a quick, career history, short one, but how did you actually get into doing this in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So I've always been very much a techie since incredibly early on in my life. It's just something that I've just always seemed to resonate with me is computers, and a lot of that curiosity was enabled by my mom. When we got a home computer, she said, look, you can go your hardest with this, and if you break it, we'll get it fixed. And so she recognized that curiosity and gave me permission to keep exploring it, which is quite different to what a lot of my friends, the advice that they got on their computer, basically a warning, if you mess this up, you're not going to get to play with it again. And this was in the mid-90s. And computers back then, this was in South Africa, but equivalent Aussie dollar figure would have been $3,000, $4,000 in the mid-90s for a family computer. So,
yeah.
Really expensive. But I did break that computer tons of times. But it did mean that I was always just tinkering, curious, and like pulling it apart. And so that was always a really fundamental part of what I've done. And then also just like from 1995 to kind of 2005, also just a fantastic period where you just saw all these new technologies come out, like the internet. First it was dial-up connection, and then it was broadband and all of that, and then smartphones shortly, like 2007 or so as well. And so I just saw like this really rapid scaling during that time. I did take a huge misstep though. When I started my career, I followed in my dad's footsteps and went into finance. So he was a finance guy, and I worked my first 4 years at a major bank, at National Australia Bank, and explored a lot of different options there, and ended up becoming a dealer there, trying to follow some kind of Wall Street dream. But just I was actually always way more excited by things I could do to make my job easier, not the actual finance part of the job, like the little productivity things and all of that. And did a massive career change in 2011. And I just thought, if there's any time to kind of jump from this very senior position that I managed to get in a short time and start again in tech, I did that. And it was fantastic. And when you're really passionate about something, even if you're having to reinvent yourself, like kind of start again, you really do catch up incredibly quickly and start overtaking. And I joined, first I joined a services firm called Accenture, which many people know about. And I landed up doing some cloud work with a platform called Salesforce, which many people know about. It was just booming. But then I joined a startup called Cloud Sherpas that was doubling every single year. And then we got acquired by Accenture 3 years later. And so
I remember actually watching the Cloud Sherpas journey, because I think whilst they were in the process, pre-Accenture's acquisition, I was chatting with Cloud Sherpas. I might have even used Cloud Sherpas as a partner during that period for some of my education businesses.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they did a lot of stuff in education, and it was amazing. Like, it was this magical period of, and still today, even with the business I have now, even some of my recent hires were people I worked with there 12 years ago. And I always had a longing to get back to something smaller, but my own thing as well, and actually have a crack of starting my own business. And I'd been dabbling with AI at Accenture, but the big bite was when ChatGPT came out, and there were just some things that you looked at and you thought, wow, this is really something a project that was going to take a year could now actually take 3 weeks because you're using this, and just started exploring that more. And I was just open with them and said, look, I think it's time for me to go do something else. And they were just awesome and fully supportive. And that kind of led to starting Pathfinder, and then how it's been is a completely different story altogether of being an entrepreneur. But yeah.
It's amazing. So many strands to pull on there. Number one, I think we were both tech nerds in our, my brother and I did pulled apart absolutely everything. We both worked at Dick Smith Electronics. So, we were always buying cost price, cables, rewiring, cars, pulling apart all the stereos and everything. And I saw somebody sent me a clip of Sale of the Century. I don't know if you got Sale of the Century in South Africa, but in Australia, I saw they had the prize at the end of Sale of the Century, this game show, which was an Apple. I've come up with an Apple IIe or 2C or something like that, which we had one of, and they were 11,500 Australian dollars. I was like, oh my god, there was so much money. I love that your parents were willing to let you loose. That's brave of them. And it's an amazing journey. And as you said, you learn a lot very quickly in a business that's scaling that fast. How am I actually going to? I mean, to join. Often through your career, you also see a lot of tailwinds. Some adjacent industry, all of a sudden it's taking off, and you're like, there's an opportunity there, but I missed it. And you saw the opportunity. I love that you saw the opportunity with ChatGPT. You're well positioned. I always think it's preparation meets opportunity. You can never just have the opportunity side. You are well prepared. You're in the right position to jump in and take advantage. And I try to talk to my kids who are now almost 17 and 20 about when ChatGPT first came out. I was like, guys, I know this, you're going to sound like this is just, some old guy who doesn't know what he's talking about. I was like, this platform is going to be as big as the iPhone and as the internet, in terms of game-changing technology. Everything is going to change from here. And I don't think we could be too wrong about that, given how fast, I was just thinking about the things that I already do in my day-to-day work that I would have either had to have a designer spend, 15 hours on, or a researcher take 15 hours on. It's amazing. And of course it's so far, I guess, kind of it's limited, but the potential in the future just becomes more unlimited as more people clamber in and more development happens. So where would you encourage founders who are in this like 1 to 30 million space, who are maybe a bit overwhelmed by the hype, and some are also probably a bit nervous about the hype, which I've heard in dialogue with people. It's like, well, still a bit skeptical. Is it really here to stay? Is it just another kind of, trendy bubble? And where, everything's AI, and then like in 2 years' time, we're all going to be talking about something else because actually it's not that big a deal. Like, how do you get people thinking about how to get a sense of where the leverage points are and maybe the highest kind of ROI, or maybe even like the easiest, least tension places to start, so they can actually get some level of acceptance and experience and, I don't know, belief in the opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. And people 2 years ago in particular were right to be skeptical because everybody was a bit burned from the metaverse, right? Like that was meant to be
Everything's going to be
everything.
Web3. We're all going to be dealing with NFT tokens. Stop using, everything's going to be
Yeah.
crypto.
And you see that there were these reports of these from these top consulting firms and investment banks and stuff saying, by 2030, it's going to be a $3 trillion industry or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, it's just kind of disappeared. And that was, people, I think, kind of maybe were trying to believe that could be true and they could kind of see it, but there were just so many barriers. And also, like potentially even just solutions looking for a problem. The thing with AI, though, is it is very different. And so people were very right to be skeptical at the beginning. And we've got a journey that we say every organization goes on. They start with being unsure. Is it real? Is it for me? And the second tier up from that is they're kind of shown what's possible, but at that point they're very overwhelmed and they start tinkering, but that's usually where everybody gets stuck. And the next tier up from that is we have every single employee being significantly more productive every day, which we call just they're supercharged. So particularly in those smaller businesses and let's say services businesses as well, you can either look at it as a threat or an opportunity. Now, like there's not really anything new about that concept, but the big new opportunity here is to become a specialist within your field on using AI. So there's two ways you can apply this. So one is you could just have a significantly more effective business, first just doing everything far quicker, far better. But the second tier is we are now doing things that you couldn't do before. So reimagining what's possible. But the other opportunity is you might be a specialist in an incredibly boring industry, but you know that industry incredibly, incredibly well. It's a huge opportunity to become the AI specialist company for that area. Because it's a general tech, if you think of something like ChatGPT, everybody sees the same chat interface when they log in. Why don't, if you're providing HR outsourced advice processing for mining companies, why don't you actually just become the HR AI specialist firm that really trains people up on how to leverage this technology if you're in HR? So you be the one to pave the way in training up others. So there's tons of ways. There's new revenue to be made in that example that I've given there. And then there's also a whole lot of new margin to be made as well by being able to completely automate and do everything a lot faster than you could before. And the entry point is really easy because you can get started by becoming an expert user of ChatGPT. Now what I mean by expert user is actually knowing. I'm not necessarily just talking about prompts here. That's one part of it, but it has different models, different features, like just tons of capability. And all the people that we've met that say that they're an expert user, they're barely using the basics. Like, in fact, we've never met somebody who's done the basics.
Sort of like basic versus expert in ChatGPT.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you think of ChatGPT, it's if you and I were to both ask ChatGPT, can you give me tips for a good podcast guest? The responses for both of us are going to be so generic to the point where it's completely useless. That's because ChatGPT doesn't really know what to tell you because you're meant to give it a very big prompt where you describe your role, who you are, what you do, that type of thing. It's very frustrating and also it's fatiguing every time you instruct ChatGPT to describe yourself and what you're trying to do. And the simplest way to do that, so that you never have to do it again, is there's a feature called custom instructions where you just tell it everything about you. Now, I have everything in there from the role that I'm in. I have my address in there as well. If I'm replying to an email or something like that, I'm using ChatGPT to create it. It's got that information in there if I need to. I have my MacBook model in there as well, so that if I'm asking for tech help, it knows what model I have. It doesn't have to ask me for that. And so every interaction that I have with it is actually really, really accurate. That's the absolute basic first level, which almost nobody has done. I'd say 1% of people who say that they're an expert has actually done that. The next level up from that is configuring custom GPTs, which are like tools that you can reuse so that you don't have to prompt every single time. You can share them across your team as well. And to give you one very simple, practical, but for me, hugely time-saving example, because I speak a lot at conferences, I'll often have to invoice for my travel afterwards. And it's just really painful to go grab all of those invoices and then write up an email. So I just created an expense summary GPT where all I do is I drop all the invoices of my trip in there, and I don't have to tell it anything other than push enter. And it comes out with a really nicely formatted whole email with a table where it's extracted everything and says, "This is my travel. Thanks for having me. Here's all the details that you can see." And then there's a link to the invoice as well. So those are really basics, but incredibly powerful when you do that.
Yeah. As a perfect example, actually, I ran out of ChatGPT memory the other day, which was an interesting first time. I was like, oh my goodness, how many things have I stored in here about me? But yeah, I have all my custom instructions set up, and I'm always trying to update those. I have probably 10 or 12 custom GPTs. And so how did I prepare my questions for David today? Well, we'd had a conversation on the phone. I had transcribed that. I threw it straight into the custom GPT and his web address and all the rest. And it researched him and it listened to our conversation and it went back and went, what are the right insightful questions in a particular format that I like? I was able to send it to you, and you're able to give you a chance to go, are these the right questions? Are we missing anything? And that process was super fast because, like you, I'm using it all day, every day, and I'm becoming more and more. I mean, actually, it's interesting how impatient it starts to make you when you realize how fast things can be done. But it does take that little extra time of setting it up. The moment you're going to do something more than 3 times in a month, it's like, okay, I probably need to do this in a more efficient way. And so then what's an example then of like expert usage, if those are some of the basics?
Yeah. So expert usage, it's a lot of trial and error to get GPTs right. There's only one way of making sure that they work, and it is just through trial and error. It requires a lot of work. There are nuances, there are quirks with these things. Now, they do fix themselves with newer updates, but that invoice example that I gave there, for whatever reason, if I attach 3 PDFs and then 1 image, it'll only extract the information from the PDFs and not the image. It doesn't tell me that it's neglected the image. I've tried every prompt possible. It still didn't do it. So I have to do those separately. But I put an instruction in there so it gives me those instructions and tells me to do it separately. The expert usage from that would be then also learning when to use different models. Now, this is where, particularly in the last month, the capability of something like ChatGPT has it's been another massive leap. And I'm still yet to have really anybody say that they're using this when I ask them, have you tried the new O3 model yet? And like nobody has. This is really cutting edge reasoning models that not only thinks through the question a lot more, but will do a lot more actions to get you the answer. So it'll all in the space of one string, like one thread. It's going to go try first really think through what you're asking. It's going to do web searches. It's going to reflect on the web searches. If let's say you wanted to know, if I wanted to invest $10,000 in some social media strategy to get my YouTube views up, in the past, ChatGPT would actually do kind of a pretty good job at answering that, but also a little bit generic. But what an O3 model would do is it would first do a whole lot of web searches. It would look at the results. Then it might do quite a few more web searches. Then it'll pull through information, and you'll actually see it spin up the code to do a whole lot of scenario calculations and then potentially do another web search. And so it's doing a lot of these different actions. And so it's almost like a real agent in action. It's deciding, it's reflecting. And so knowing when to use those models is, I'd say, starting to get to expert usage. Probably the biggest thing that makes an expert in ChatGPT is it's just a habit. They use it all the time. Like I'm certain there's 10 million people out there who are way better prompters than me. I'd say I'm a terrible prompter. I just ask a question, I look at the result, I ask another question until I get the answer that I'm looking for. But I'm using it all day, every day, and I know when to flip through the different models. So it's just really habit for me.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, I stumbled into some, I thought it was interesting because I would probably, I don't know what level I am, but I'm definitely quite a way beyond basic, and I do a lot of deep research using ChatGPT for different kinds of tasks, and I actually ran out of deep research credits. And then I was like, oh, I wonder if there's other credits in these other models that are also. And then I started exploring O3 with the more advanced reasoning. I was like, oh my God, look, it's telling me exactly what it's doing. It's showing me what it's searched for. And it's so interesting to follow how it's actually doing its reasoning. And you think, there's no way I would have thought of that. There's no way I would have followed my research in that kind of order and sequence. Like yesterday, I used O3 for I'm in a new country, and so the financial system, you have to have financial audits, like proper financial audited accounts every single year. And so then, auditors throw up questions, and I'm trying to understand the policies and the local tax laws and the implications on immigration and all these other things. And O3 was absolutely unbelievable. Inside sort of 3 minutes, was able to give me the most comprehensive, high quality. I thought I would have had to speak to a lawyer, a corporate lawyer, an immigration lawyer, a tax specialist, and an accountant, and then try to somehow triangulate all of their different opinions and figure out who to believe to come up with what it was able to give me in 3 minutes. And I was able to follow the sequential thinking. It was so powerful. Seems like a real missed opportunity that I've never seen ChatGPT say, hey, by the way, there's a new model here. Here's how you should use this one. Here's how you should use this one. Here's some examples. I haven't seen that, but maybe I'm just missing it.
Well, apparently they're working on it because, the user experience is absolutely terrible. So like when you hopped into a car, it was all scientific names for each of the components and all of that. It's just like when you're looking at the steering wheel, imagine it was some funny scientific name, but that's how the user experience is when you go into it. And it's incredibly confusing. So you have 4.0, which is a base model, but then you have O3, which is a reasoning model, so far cleverer in how it works.
But with one number less.
Exactly. So some people will say that I'm really confused. Why is version 3 more powerful than version 4? And then you go, well, no, that's a reasoning model. And they go, well, should I be using O4? I said, well, no, that's a mini. It's a smaller one. It's so confusing. But Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has come out and said, look, we get it. We're the laughingstock of the user experience here. They've just brought on a new CEO of OpenAI applications, and so they're going to be working on that. The end goal is going to be that if you're using AI should be able to figure out when to use what parts of AI, and so it'll flip between the models itself, and then you'll get to, if you think it can do better on one versus another, you'll then be able to just quickly switch it to something else.
Yeah. Given what you've prompted, I would suggest that we use X, Y, Z. Does that make sense to you? Is that the kind of output that you want? Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. What are some of the, I'm conscious in a services business, and you talked about the overwhelm before. So you've got these founders in front of you, and let's say they've got a $3 million business, $5 million, $10 million. So they've got some resources, they've got some money to be able to invest to start to get. So like step one is you have to be using this stuff to actually be able to almost open your mind to what is possible, because until you're using it all the time, you're like, oh, what if I did it this way? Like you don't really think about that until you get there. But then, I imagine that clients probably want quick wins, or you would like to get them some quick wins so that it sort of starts the dopamine rush of like, oh, this really works for me. Maybe I should do more. Like, what are some of those early use cases beyond kind of ChatGPT proficiency that you get them working on that are maybe pretty common across a lot of the different businesses that you see, particularly services businesses?
Yeah, so services businesses. So firstly, if you do want to come up with quick wins, if you want to come up with ways, so ChatGPT, like I'm hopping on a bit about ChatGPT because it is really the gateway drug for AI. It is usually where most people's journeys start. It's also a tool that I didn't give enough credit when I first started this journey. So I initially thought, well, this ChatGPT is just really a great demo of the technology behind it, but you're going to have to build custom things to really get it to work. And it's not true. Like the advancements over the last year, there's definitely been very expensive builds that we've done for customers that can now just be achieved with prompting. And so I'd say that's the number one place to start anybody in the AI journey is becoming an expert with ChatGPT. So if you're looking for ideas of how to use ChatGPT in your business, ask ChatGPT. So what you can do, this works quite well. You can say, describe your role. I'm so-and-so. Describe your business. This is my role. It's the first time I'm using ChatGPT. I don't know how to use it. I'm looking for ideas. I get told it's a great tool. Can you interview me? And even better, can you ask me 10 questions and then give me ideas of how to use ChatGPT? And you're going to get a fantastic response. And then after that, riff with it. So I would then say, well, where would you start? What's easiest? What could I do today? Okay, so that's more generally to help you. Now, in terms of the big wins for services businesses, so sales is, there's a massive opportunity in the sales space. So in sales, I'd say B2B services businesses, it's the sales process is really rough. Like it's cumbersome. Responding to an RFP, getting some kind of contract out, getting some type of tender out or something like that. It's usually a hugely inefficient and incredibly difficult process. So that's a fantastic place to start. And a few ways to do that, I'll just prompt a few ideas. Like a GPT, you could have a prospect briefing GPT. So you're going to go see a new customer. Before you go see them, you've configured this GPT. And even if you have it, you could just ask, say, I'm about to see so-and-so. Can you help me understand about their business and how whatever your service is might be able to help them? Now, this is where if you create a GPT, you're just going to have to type in the customer's business name and it's going to go do the rest for you. And it's going to be fantastic for you to come up with an initial idea. The next step of that is, let's say you've got quite a lot of competition and you want to keep on top of what they're doing in the market, at least publicly. You could use ChatGPT tasks to create you an industry and competitor briefing that's sent to you every Friday morning. This is a fantastic starting point. It's a feature that I've never really met anybody who uses it. Most people don't know it exists, but if you go to ChatGPT, you can go to tasks and you can set it so that at 8 a.m. on a Friday morning, it does a full web search about your competitors, maybe industry news, creates a newsletter in a particular format, and then notifies you. You're going to get an email every Friday morning. You're going to click on that. And it's going to open up the results. The other things in sales is responding to tenders, very challenging. You might have, it's very time consuming. So let's say you have 50 case studies and you've got them all in different places at the moment. It's always very challenging. Take the time to actually go consolidate all of those case studies to one place and actually put it as an attachment to a GPT. Because now when you're responding to the tender, firstly, you can just drop the tender in there and hit enter, and it's going to come up with the first cut of the response for you. And one of those questions might be, describe a couple of case studies where you might have done this in the past. And it's going to go through those 50 documents and find it all for you and put it there. That might take somebody dozens of hours to get to that point, just an absolute mess. And then there's so those, I'd say that's kind of basic usage.
And maybe adding just to the tenders, when I previous client did a lot of work on tenders and ended up using some AI to help people actually first assess whether they should even bother. Because if you're thinking about, you see a tender come through, the actual work to go, should we or should we not now go and spend 4 weeks and 100 man hours and whatever putting together this tender response? Like, okay, get it to come up with a sort of an assessment rubric based on the tender, and then look at all of your case studies and go, am I actually even going to compete on this? Like, where am I going to be strong? Where am I going to be weak? Where are my gaps? So that you can decide, should I put effort? Can I close them? Could I close them with a partner or a subcontractor or whatever before I even start drafting my response? I love the idea of, I use ChatGPT a lot to score opportunities, kind of assess things, and then provide recommendations to see if those gaps can be closed, to try to also get it to self-learn. Like, hey, I was working with ChatGPT to come up with a voice agent, basically to do a text-based version of a voice agent, because I have clients that take inbound calls, and I know that they can be done more efficiently with a voice agent. So I was first trying to, ratify the process in a text-based, to and fro. Let's test this. I'll be the client, you be the salesperson, whatever. Let's talk about the script. So we went through all that, and then at the end of it, I'd say, I now want you to come up with a best practice scorecard, score this conversation that we just had, and then assess for yourself, like debrief yourself. What should you be doing better? What did you do well? What can you do differently? And it would essentially self-learn and then give you the recommendations. Like, cool, now just put those recommendations in, boom, and it would actually improve the conversation. I think that almost forcing it to self-reflect is awesome.
Yeah, so you've touched on something really interesting here. So the way we describe AI is that you're onboarding 3 new team members. The first is an assistant. So this is somebody who is, I'd say, quite an experienced, or quite like a really capable graduate. So they're very smart, they're very well read, but they're also quite green. They need a lot of direction. And that example of go through 50 pages worth of case studies and find the right ones is something that any grad can do with basically no experience, right? Perfect. Everybody wants that. The second persona is, it's a thinker. So this is actually on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. They kind of don't like doing work, but they love giving advice, and they really like advising you. And this would be, you're going to hand this thinker all of the information about this tender, and they're going to come back to you and say, look, I don't think it's worth it for all of these reasons. You're not going to win this thing because you've never won one like this before. Yeah. And these are all the reasons why I think, or maybe some alternative options. Another way to use the thinker is, let's say you've done the whole proposal, presentation, everything yourself. You're very early in AI. You're very uncomfortable with handing this to it. Why don't you just give it your pitch and say, I'm pitching to so-and-so. Can you ask me 10 difficult questions that they might ask me? Now, if you're in tech and say you're in software services, it'll read through a whole architecture diagram and it'll say, well, in your system architecture, you haven't addressed security. And this is something which could stump you. Like, it's an obvious thing. You should have had security there, but I mean, we're human, we forget. And now instead of an enterprise architect catching you all-footed there, you're going to go, oh, of course, like I'm going to go update this or fix it. So, it's incredible. We often say that AI is really good at the beginning and the end. So in that case, with a case study at the beginning, finding those things, or at the end, the double check. So first draft or double check is something where it's really, really strong.
And what's the third role?
The third role is a creator. So this is where you're creating things. Now, the first one is text. So everybody's LinkedIn feed is filled up with AI-generated garbage. Definitely not encouraging that. But the things like even newsletters and that, you might just use it to create a first draft or to help you get through some writer's block. The first battle was, how do I get it to sound in my own voice, in our own brand voice? That's really been sorted now. But the other mediums are really, really good. So if it can do text, it can do code. So of course, it's really good at writing code now. It keeps getting better and better. But now image, particularly with the new image gen that came out like 2 months ago from ChatGPT. Don't confuse this with DALL-E from many months ago. It's incredibly powerful. So to give you an idea, we know a real estate company that when they're leasing properties, they're taking photos of an empty bedroom and they're asking it to populate it with a certain amount of furniture. And it's doing an incredible job of it. It is doing an incredible job of it. The most mind-blowing part of it is it'll actually do reflections and things in the mirrors as well. It isn't 100% perfect. Like, you might see the weather boards or whatever, let's say it's a Queenslander house or something, they're almost the same. It's somehow kind of replaced it with an almost identical version of it, but it's a little tweak. So there's lots of interesting ways to use image generator. On the voice side, it's really powerful as a marketing tool there. So particularly services. For any services that you want to have a heightened level of account management, you could create an audio description, like an audio update in your voice, in your customer's native language, that he dropped to them on WhatsApp once a week. Or in the case of one of our customers, they do investments, and their customers absolutely love that they get this personalized audio update in the voice of their account manager, but in Mandarin. So very cool, very cool. It's not fully automated yet or anything. There's a bit of drag and drop, but all that account manager does is they just do the tweaks on the copy that's going to go to them, and then they generate the audio from there. So, and then they just drop it to WhatsApp.
Is the audio being generated from ChatGPT or from 11 Labs or something? Or
11 Labs, yeah.
11, okay.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Actually, I've been chatting, I've been doing a fair bit in the voice agent space. I was chatting with a developer the other day, and he'd built just a really simple voice agent AI for basically being the restaurant. You dial a restaurant and you want to get a takeaway order or a delivery or something. And this was, it could, in the same, as you said, in the same 11 Labs voice sounding, was able to show me how, it could nail 100 languages. He's like, okay, now let me ask it in Arabic. Okay, now let me ask it in, in Italian, in Spanish, etc. And it was, same voice, but I couldn't believe how good the enunciation was in the other languges with the same voice.
Voice is the next big thing, and our expectations of call centers are going up massively. So we've launched one of Australia's first voice agents for an insurance company, and we've got a big release in about a week's time with them, and also one of the state governments. But the whole idea there is, firstly, it's 24/7 service, so that's the first part. But even within office hours, not getting a press 1 for this, press 2 for that, just simply, how can I help you today? Now, let's say you still want to speak to a human. Maybe that's why you've called. Maybe you could have done it online. Instead of being on hold the whole time, that's really a golden time. So you could say, how can I help you today? And the way that we've done it here is it's going to ask you up to one additional question, but we don't really know what it's going to ask. The AI is going to decide. And then it's going to go hunt for the answer for the actual call center agent, so it's ready for them when they open up the records. So I just think really, really interesting opportunities there.
Yeah, I think there's also, probably shouldn't say too much, but I am working on a project in the background around voice agents. And obviously I know the education space very well, and I've trained a lot of salespeople, and some very significant opportunities there. And I'm very close to a proof of concept that I'm comfortable with could be used by someone like me in my previous roles who might have 50 sales agents or 75 sales agents or whatever. There's some very big opportunities there, and the quality in text was unbelievable. And so I'm now just kind of connecting it through to a voice version. So what about most services businesses usually don't have much recurring revenue? Of course, is one of the annoying things for lots of services businesses. Like some have figured out some kind of managed service kind of model, but quite often they're delivering a project or a job or something. They're being paid for their IP and the people and the time, and then it sort of ends. You talked about sort of like productizing, productizing knowledge using AI that might give people a different way of also creating a new revenue stream. Can you give me any examples of that?
Yeah, 100%. So I've really leaned in on a whole lot of ChatGPT examples here, because it is really the right place to start and to become an expert. If you think you're an expert in it, you're probably not. Dive in a bit deeper. Okay, so the next step is leveraging the technology behind ChatGPT, but to create a highly specialized, domain fine-tuned chat agent experience. So if let's say your specialty is accounting, it's accounting in Australia. Maybe it's even accounting so niche it's in one particular domain. People will need to know how to use ChatGPT really, really well to be able to use that properly for like accounting and tax advice for that area. It's also there is a chance that it's going to get it wrong if they're not using it properly, and the consequences will be pretty big. So one of the things that you could offer is, after your service, you have a chatbot that they can subscribe to. And what they get from that is you have really instructed this chatbot how it responds. When there's a new change or update to some kind of legislation, you've really encoded in there what it should prioritize, what it shouldn't. And also you can set it up in a way so that you're seeing a certain level of the usage. Now, you have to figure out the privacy considerations if your customers are comfortable with that, but it could be as simple as thumbs up, thumbs down, so that you can see how people are using this. So all of a sudden, you get to be the person that has built a very specialized accounting advisor that is being used even by initially 5 different businesses, you're seeing how they're using it, what they're thumbs upping, what they're thumbs downing. And then that's what they're paying for, is they're not having to pay you each time. Instead of you giving advice or services to one customer, you're giving it to one AI agent, and you're spending all your time there, and everybody else is leveraging this. So one area that I think this is going to be particularly valuable, if you are in a specialist area that is small, is getting smaller, but is still massive. So something like COBOL programming language that still operates most of the mainframes of banks and telcos and that in Australia. But nobody's going to uni to learn COBOL. Like, it's a dying programming language. What I would do if I were a very seasoned COBOL engineer, and I've been spending the last 30 years doing this, I would be creating the best COBOL agent in the world and putting all my knowledge in there and really trying to sell that at a significant fee, because a COBOL engineer's fee is absolutely massive because there are less and less of them, and the risk is so high. So turning your services into SaaS, and when people say to you, well, why wouldn't I just use ChatGPT? You go, well, ChatGPT will get you 90% accurate. And also you're going to be concerned whether it's accurate or not. You're not sure. You're going to have that doubt. What you're paying for me is the extra 10, 20% to make sure that it is accurate. And that's all that I do. All I do 24/7 is make sure that my AI agent gives very specific accounting advice for the funeral industry in New South Wales. That's all that I do. So, that type of thing I think is a tremendous opportunity.
I couldn't agree more with that. And I think it's one of those, one of the things that you notice. So we think about when you're using ChatGPT yourself, with your own perspective and your own experience, you're like, that's nice, but that doesn't actually really work, because, I know how humans respond to that, and I've done that 1,000 times, and therein lies the opportunity. I think also the opportunity inside that, because I'm obviously, of course, thinking about that from a ScaleHQ perspective. Like, ultimately, I have knowledge, I have experience, I build, a system for people to scale and build foundations and so on. And so as I build out the group version of this for 2026, there will be an AI agent as part of that allows the whole community to make it smarter as well. So it's actually also learning, as you said, from the questions that you're getting to see. So the whole community being involved in it actually makes the model better for the community, because I can see what it needs to be trained on with all of their questions and queries coming in. Plus, it makes the implementation of ideas way faster. So I already use custom GPs today live with clients. So I have a template for, putting together a particular kind of way that I like to describe to a team member what success looks like for them, called a success profile. Well, I've already built that into a GPT. So if I'm actually live with a client today, I don't send them the success profile, spend, 90 minutes working through it. It's like, let's just do this with the GPT right now. Let me ask you, a few questions. Boom, we've got a 90% ready to go template already produced in the right format, ready to implement. Just speed lead to implementation.
There's actually a free way for people to get started with this as well. So now this is not going to bring you, it's probably not going to bring you any revenue, but it's certainly going to make people very interested and aware. You can share these GPTs publicly as well, publicly or privately. So you could say, hey, as part of our services, you're probably tinkering with ChatGPT. We've got a couple of GPTs that we created for this space. As part of joining us, we'll give you that link. And it's just cool. They'll go, wow, they won't even know what a GPT is, but all of a sudden you've made them aware how to leverage AI for the service that you're offering them. And that's something which will take you 2 minutes to do. It's just giving somebody additional access to a GPT.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I should be doing that for my clients right now. Thanks for the prompt. I like that one. Well, I'm conscious of how much time we've got left. I've probably got one more question for you. What are the things not to do, or what are the things that people get wrong that you're like, hey, don't approach it this way, because it's more likely to result in failure or fatigue, or it's overwhelmed, disconnection from the whole the opportunity that exists?
Yeah. So I think mindset is the biggest part of it. So AI is this very interesting thing where with social media, some people will excuse 99% of the ills of social media because of the 1% good thing it does. So they'll go, look, I know I'm addicted. I know that I check it a million times a day. I know that I get bombarded with ads, but I get to see what my friends are doing on the weekend. It's like, but you haven't spoken to those people in 30 years. Like, what do you care? But with AI, it seems to be the opposite, where people will have so much of it. See, wow, it's really helpful for these things, but it made a mistake in this one area, and now all of a sudden you're stopping using it. So it's this really strange inverse, and I'm not quite sure where it comes from. So the first thing to go into it is a mindset and appreciation that this is weird tech. It's very weird. We have not had technology like this before. We've never had technology that has no clue how to do what you're asking it to, but will go, I'll have a crack. Like we've never had that before. Like that 99.9% of the things that anybody uses ChatGPT for, nobody has designed it to do that thing. And so that's very strange. And sometimes it'll hallucinate or lie. It'll do these things. And so just realize that it is a bit of a journey. But you'll find if you do approach this, like really dive into it, you are gonna be blown away. That is always what we get, even in the first demo of showing people how to use ChatGPT. We do it all live. People would break professionalism and drop the F-bomb in that first meeting. All of a sudden, you have the CFO or finance person. All of a sudden, they'll go, "That took me 6 hours yesterday, and you just did it in 10 seconds. So that's the first part, with the mindset of what the tech can do. The second part is it's incredibly limiting to look at AI to simply do what you do today, but faster. So you could just offshore it, right? You could just offshore it. Or maybe you don't even need to do that thing in the first place. You're trying to automate a process that shouldn't exist. So this is quite challenging, but you're being presented, particularly a founder, an entrepreneur, a leader. These opportunities don't come around very often. Like you're being presented with an iPhone moment or an e-commerce moment where everybody's trying to figure out, everybody's confused, overwhelmed. Don't just do the travel itinerary that I spoke about earlier. Take a core service and turn it into SaaS. Do something that you couldn't do today. Reimagine that. And the only way through that is to tinker. You've got to try different things. But the final thing with this is it's very accessible. It really is. Yeah.
I think that's a really great, example, because I heard it just, in the last several days. I was chatting to a bunch of kind of education mates who run an education business. One who's very experienced, basically runs a fund that invests in education businesses. Another one who's running a large education business. So what are you seeing with voice agents? And one said, oh, well, actually, we deployed a voice agent to reactivate leads. It started 6 months ago. It's made 71 sales. And his courses would be cost $40,000, 71 sales times $40,000. That's I don't know how much, that's $3 million, almost, something like that. And the other one was I don't know, voice agents. These are high cost leads. This is high risk. I can imagine doing the lead reactivation stuff, but taking the first phone call, I'm not sure about that. And I was thinking that is exactly the point, right? If you challenge yourself, I remember hearing the same thing from a friend who trains education salespeople, who said, you know what? We'll never be able to get Philippine salespeople to succeed in calling Australian domestic students for domestic enrollments. Until he's at some point, he literally held on to that idea for 10 years. And then he tried it, and they were so much better than the Australians. He then built an entire business around it. So I think that's sort of challenging your core assumption about core services and the thing that you think is absolutely not doable yet. Maybe that's an interesting place to explore.
Yeah, and one final example of this, because it just prompted me there. So if you're a an offshoring partner, there was one company that we worked with on this recently. Now they said that their engineers in Vietnam. Now this is just they're talking about themselves, and I'm still not making a broad assumption here. But their engineering team in Vietnam was absolutely excellent. But their English wasn't great. The engineers in Vietnam were far more proficient than the ones in the Philippines that they had recruited. So what they had to do in every project is they have to put a project manager on it that has to basically be the translator. Now imagine if every communication it can be translated for their Vietnamese team, that all of a sudden their Vietnamese team can actually be delivering to any country in the world in basically any common enough language. So this is where you can really kind of challenge business models and ways of doing things. And the final point on this is, particularly in services, is you have to really abandon the idea of charging by the hour. Like it's an absurd thing. Now, I think charging by the hour is terrible. Like it's a race to the bottom. It's very hard to differentiate, but just say our fee for delivering this work is X. We don't do by the hour because we've got a whole bunch of AI agents that are actually helping us perform a lot of the tasks. And it's really hard to account for that. So you can also really find a way to start differentiating.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, charge on value makes complete sense. I could talk to you. I'm super passionate about this, and I'm like right in it every day, all day, thinking about it. And it's so great to get to meet you and have this conversation, and to be able to have such a practical one and a kind of non-complicated, uber technical conversation, because that's not our audience. So I really want to say thanks for being able to deliver this in a way that is digestible for our audience. Really enjoyed getting to know you. Any final comment or question or anything that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, it's I mean, you can tell how deeply passionate I am about all of this, but it's still very difficult for people to know where to start. So we've launched a new website, which is just startlearning.ai. I have no clue how that domain was still available. I have no clue. But all that's going to do is redirect you to our monthly free webinar that we put on, and hop on, invite your team. It's going to be a combination of some thought leadership, but it's mostly practical. You're going to learn a lot of things I just touched on. Invite your whole team. It's a great session. You're going to have a lot of fun. And you'll also have an opportunity to ask a ton of questions there as well.
That's great. Well, that was going to be my next question, is where would you like to direct people to? But let's send them to startlearning.ai. That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Dawid. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to having a follow-up conversation. We should probably schedule one in every 6 to 9 months, given how fast this moves. I'm sure you're going to be learning a lot. The business is going to be scaling fast, and so the use cases will also change pretty quickly. So thanks very much
100%. For you. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Sean. This has been awesome. Thanks all for having me on. Really appreciate it.